Hello and welcome to the second lesson of our beginner Unity scripting tutorial course. Today we'll learn how to make the game that you see right now on the screen. It's a stacking game where you have to more or less match the size of scaled tile to the previous tile and don't let it grow too much. So let's open our Unity, create our project, and first thing that we'll need to do is to create a script folder to keep everything organized. Then enter it, and let's create our script. Let's call it Game Manager. People usually tend to say that Game Manager is a bad thing as a script, but Unity even has its own icon for it, so I would still use it, especially for such a single project. Let's drag it to our main camera and open it in Visual Studio. So for our game, we need to keep track of previous tile. I would make it public. It will be a game object. We need to keep track of our current tile. We need to keep track of our prefabs that we use to spawn tiles, not really keep track of, but reference. And we need to keep a track of our score and start with 1. We need to have a text where we print our score so player can see how much tiles he stacked. Don't forget that we have to use Unity engine.ui in order to use text. Another thing that we need is restart button so we can start the game over once we lost. First thing that we need to do is to handle the input. We do it by checking if the button on the mouse, the left one, which is represented by 0, was pressed. If statement checks if the thing in brackets is true and then executes everything that is put inside it. Let's just deal with player click, which is a function that we still need to create. Let's create our function of type void, so it will return nothing. So let's talk about if statements. You use them to check if something is true or false. And in our case, for example, if 5 is bigger than 6, we can type into our console that 5 is bigger than 6. But if it's not, then we go to else, and everything that is in brackets after else will be executed in case 5 is actually less than 4, which is not a thing. And we'll just type that 5 is less than 4. We use if to check for some condition. It can be if object is null, so non-existent, or something is bigger or smaller or equal to something else. And we can use if alone or combine it with else, or even do a bigger structure with if, else if, and else, for example. As many else ifs as you want. The first condition that will evaluate to true, for example, if current tile will be equal to null, will be executed. We have to check if current tile is equal to null to figure out if it is a first round or not, because only in the first round we don't have this current tile actually created. What we need to do now, is actually create a tile in the game once the player clicks. So to do that, we have to use instantiate, which creates an object from a reference object from a prefab, for example. We have our tile prefab referenced on top, so we use that. And we need to spawn it 1 meter above the previous tile because the size of our tile is 1 in case of height. So we need to put it 1 tile on top of the another. We do that by adding to the previous tile vector3.up, which is basically vector 3, 0, 1, 0 for x, y, and z. And also we have to put rotation in, so we'll take just the rotation of a previous tile. We also have to create a tile in case we are not in the first round. So let's just copy it more or less. We have to do it only if our previous round was successful. So we have to check again using if condition if the scale of our previous tile is bigger than the scale of our current tile. We can check it only by x or z, for example, because we don't scale in y. So if it is bigger, then player clicked in time and he was successful. So let's just print into our console that player was just in time. Let's save the tile that we are instantiating to our current tile, so we have a reference to the stuff that we just created. We have to do it in both cases, if it's first one or if it's in the middle of the game. And in case we are actually losing because we allowed the tile to grow too much, let's copy and paste and just say that not accurate enough. Let's set the previous tile to our current tile before we create a new one, so we're preparing for the next round because our tile this round in the next round will be the previous one. We also need to move our camera up every time we're successful, because otherwise the tiles will just go up out of our camera's view. So we can do it by accessing camera.main, which will give us our main camera, and then just increase its position by the same amount as we increase for the new tile. Increase our score because we were again successful and move to the next level, and print our score into the text field by doing similar stuff that we did in previous lesson, just taking our int score and moving it into a string, transforming. Let's remove start because we don't need it. And in case of losing, let's enable the restart button, which will keep disabled by default, just by calling setActive on the game object and setting it to true. We need a function that our button will call. Let's create it. Restart level. Let's just open this scene again from scratch, so we don't need to reset anything. We do that by calling scene manager.load scene and putting index of our scene as a parameter. We also have to use Unity Engine's scene management in order to be able to do it. We will set it later in editor, our scene as index 0 in build settings. Let's also move our tile here, scale. So let's scale it with some speed, which will be 0.01 for now. I think it's a good speed. And in our update, we have to check if current tile is not equal to null, so it exists, so we actually started the game. And we have to modify its local scale by vector 3. By vector 3, 101 xyz, and multiply it by speed. Since y is 0, whatever we multiply it by, it will stay 0, but everything else will be multiplied by speed, so it will only grow to the x and z axis. Let's go to the Unity and actually build our scene. So let's see what we need to assign. After we set up our camera to position 0, we need our canvas so we can have our text for the score and for the button. And we need the objects, the tiles itself. So we create our base tile of scale 10, that will be our maximum size. And let's create a material for it. Drag a material onto the cube and change its color to green. Let's create a folder for materials to keep things organized. And create another folder for prefabs, which we call resources. Let's duplicate our cube and call it new tile. So we know that it will be new tile. Set the scale back to 1 and drag it into resources folder, then delete it from the scene. That's our new prefab. We can assign some stuff already in our game manager. For example, game tile, which is our base cube, previous tile. Score will start with 1. And we assign our tile prefab to new tile. We still need score text and restart button. So we create a canvas. Then we create a text. and the button. Let's set up our canvas. So it's too big, as you see. We have to change some settings. Change render mode to screen space camera and drag the main camera. And plane distance, set it to 1. You can see now it's pretty small. Change the size of the button and position it centered. And let's change the text on the button to restart after we change the size to something big. Let's disable the button and drag it to the field on our game manager. Same with the text, we can also drag it. But remember, we have on-click on buttons. This is where we have to call restart level function. So let's click plus, drag our main camera because it helps our game manager script, and select restart level function. So now when we press this button, it will restart the game. Here we have to go to build settings and add open scenes to the list of scenes. And you can see the index of this scene, and that's why we put 0 for load level function. Let's drag our score text and move it a bit so we see it better. Also change size so it fits bigger font. Let's position our camera so it sees the tiles that we are spawning. Let's just move it until it looks at the tiles at some angle. I think it's good enough. Just a bit higher and that's it. Yeah, that's pretty good. Let's start the game. So nothing happens, then we press left mouse button. It starts drawing. Stop. 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 And we can see the count on top. It increases every time we click. And it drew too much. We lost. So we can press restart and it starts from the beginning. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please leave me some feedback because I'm not sure how easy for people to understand what I'm doing here, especially since I targeted to beginners. I hope you enjoy the game, and I hope you like the format where we build a game every time by learning some scripting. Like, subscribe, and see you in the next lesson.